This podcast contains material that is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all listeners. Enjoy.
I don't want to get on the bandwagon. I'll burn that wagon down and join the band. Traveling troubadours terrorizing street corners just to try to get some supper in our hands. Now I waited all my life to get this off my chest, scream bloody murder until someone understands that it ain't about the money, the drugs, or the women. I make this noise just because I can, and we'll all join in to that original sin. So let's get rowdy and reckless. Let's get rowdy and reckless. Let's get rowdy and reckless. Just for the hell of it. Just for the hell of it.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Old Man Strength, a podcast of the Tailgate Society and brought to you by Deadeye Barbecue Sauce, the best damn barbecue sauce in the known universe. I am Tim Johnson, joined tonight by, as always, by Chris Shipley. Chris, how are we doing today?
Doing all right, not too bad.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Chris and I spend some time talking about what we as old men lament. Chris, you came up with something you wanted to talk about this week. I'll go ahead and let you introduce that.
Yeah, I got two young boys that are, young. I guess they're 17. They'll be 18. Their birthday's coming up, so they've been talking a lot about, what they want to do for their birthday or whatever. And they're on this whole skateboard kick. And I watched Jordan the other day. He was watching YouTube. He's watching this guy put together a skateboard. And it dawned on me, I remembered some of the stuff they watch on YouTube and some of the other stuff. And I think, I don't get it. Like some of the stuff that is trendy or cool right now to do, I just roll my eyes and go, that might be the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. So, and clearly that's an old man perspective, right? I get it. Yep. I understand it. But it got me thinking, there are plenty of times through the week where I'll see something or I'll think of something and I'll be like, that's fucking stupid. Yeah. And I'll be like, I must be the only one that doesn't get it. But I think maybe what we need to do is we need to come up with, I don't know, just top of the random things that we find that people think are really super cool or hip or trendy. And you or I are like, no, not fucking doing that.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's kind of where I think we ought to go with it. And I think we can tie it in because I think a lot of followers out here in this world that people just follow along and go along with the flow and want to do, what the next door neighbor's doing or try to keep up with the Joneses, as my dad used to say. And I think there's a little bit of time that we need to talk about not doing that kind of stuff.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
Got to be your own person. So I made a list. I also talked to I asked Caitlin today, I said, what are some things that are hip and cool? And she's like, why, are you going to make fun of me on your podcast tonight? And I was like, no, why would I ever make fun of you on your podcast? So, but when you got four kids and they're all, 24, 20 and 18 and 18 or 17 and 17, there's a wealth of knowledge, but then you have younger kids and I'm sure there's things that they like to do or is it popular for them that we look back and go, what? Why are we doing that? I'm not doing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's a lot of things that, as much as I try to stay relevant, I guess, I have looked at my folks and how they have aged and the things that they have been able to stay on top of and the things they haven't. And it's made me concerned. Maybe I should be paying more attention to trends or learning how to do certain things. There's also just some aspects of life today for someone from age 5 to 35 that I just don't get what they're doing, why something is fascinating. It certainly makes me feel old, but at the same time feel like, no, I'm right. This is stupid.
Yeah, I I had a little bit of a bout of that. Like I would like to think that I'm pretty. I won't use the word hip. I don't know that that's. And most of the younger people don't know what that means anyway.
I was gonna say using the word hip is in and of itself not hip.
Shows how old I am. I'd like to think that I'm fairly proficient in things that are cool around here or whatever else, right? But I'm tech savvy. I listen to pretty current music, whatever. But I went through a period about 12 years ago, right before I met Stacy, who I'm married to now. I lost like a ton of weight, and I was down to like 200 pounds. And I was 37, and I went and shopped, and I bought a ton of clothes at Aeropostale, right? So first of all, you can already tell where this story's going. So I got the Aeropostale like sweatshirts and the t-shirts, and I got like 5 or 6 hats, and I'd ask my kids, like, you guys want to go shopping tonight? We can go to Aeropostale. And, for some reason, my kids didn't want to buy it, but I was buying all kinds of stuff. And I went to work one day, and I'm sitting at my cubicle, and my buddy sitting next to me goes, dude, don't you feel bad for knocking over a 24-year-old kid to get that fucking hat? And I was like, what are you talking about, man? And in my mind, I'm like, what? This is the style, right? Not for a 37-year-old man. You look like an idiot, he said. So shortly after that, I retired the Aeropostale, and now every time I go past there, my current wife will be like, remember when you used to wear all that Aeropostale stuff?
Oh, that's
like, right. And
funny. That reminds me, there's a comedian, Greg Barrett, about 10 years ago. He said that he was at a concert, and he had a chain wallet, and the usher said, hey, you can't have that here. And he said, why? Because it's a weapon? Because you feel threatened by it? He goes, no, because you're a 40-year-old man wearing a chain wallet. Get out of here. Yeah, no, I think that's funny. That makes me laugh that you even bring up Aeropostale, because that's something that, to me, 10 years ago, I felt old because I didn't know what it was or how it was hip or relevant. 10 years ago, I didn't have kids, so I was in that gray area between young enough in theory to not have kids, even though I'd been, married for a decade at that point anyway, but still old enough to not know what's going on. I think clothing is probably one of those things that is generational in a lot of ways. Sure. We laughed at what our parents wore when we were kids. They shook their heads at what we were wearing and wondered what was going on. I recognize it's a generational thing. All that said, that's probably one of the first things on my list that I look at when I look at how people are dressed, and I'm just wondering how, why, what made you think to leave the house looking like that? Which again makes me feel and sound like a very old man, but I can imagine that there are things, certainly things that probably Caitlin was wearing maybe even a few years ago, or even what your boys are wearing right now at 17, that you're wondering, okay, that's something that's supposed to look good, appealing? I don't know. Thoughts?
Well, I will tell you that's one of the first things on my list is a clothing option. 2 things. Number 1, it's the middle of January. I'm dropping the kids off to school, and these nut jobs are wearing gym shorts and a sweatshirt in the middle of January. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, how are you even functional? That's crazy to me. But they don't even think about it. And so I don't get that. That's stupid. But the other one that I've seen a lot where I'm like, first of all, I used to get teased for this as a kid. But these people that are wearing these dress pants that the pant legs are too short.
Yes.
And they're showing their socks. And you're like, are you waiting for a flood?
Yeah.
If my old man comes out and goes, what are you waiting for a flood? I used to get teased for that kind of stuff. Who knew 30 years ago when I had cheap hand-me-down pants that were too short because we were poor, that I was a trendsetter when I was like 16. Who knew that?
Yeah, so the pants that are not what I would consider the right size are apparently the right size. And, I definitely wore pants that were probably baggier than my dad would have liked. But right now it seems like they're about 3 inches off the top of the shoe. And then the waist is also low enough that they can't bend down to pick up if they drop their keys without showing a butt crack. And then they're all very tight. They're all...
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my pants are tight because I'm fat, not because that's what I choose to wear them like. But that's just not a good look. And I will admit that I have bought some crazy cool socks. I'm all right with that.
Sure.
But I also wear my pant legs where they break a little bit when they hit my shoe. That just seems normal to me.
Right.
And then when I'm sitting down, they might pull up a little bit and you can see them. But these people that are walking around and the bottom of the pant legs are just flapping around. I mean, there's no way you got up in the morning and put that on. The first dude that bought that outfit and said, this shit looks cool.
You know what's even crazier to me? Not the first dude who did that. The second dude who did that. Because the first dude who did that, maybe he's a little off or maybe he doesn't understand what's going on. But that the second guy went, oh, man, that does look good. I should also dress like that. Yeah.
The second guy's the follower. He's the problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
He's the problem. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, that's just not a good look.
The other thing that seems weird to me, and I still can't do it, button-down shirts. Buttoning the very top button right at the collar for a button-down shirt. I grew up only doing that if I was going to wear a necktie. Any other time, that just looks like... First of all, it looks uncomfortable. Who wants to have something buttoned right around their neck, choking you? But it looks goofy to me when I see that without a tie on it. It's something that you and I would have been made fun of as kids if we were buttoning that top button.
Yeah, that's another one. I don't get that. The other one I don't get is now I will sometimes wear like a hoodie sweatshirt with some cargo shorts.
Sure.
But the people that wear shorts and then a long sleeve, almost like a dress shirt, like that doesn't fly for me either.
Yeah, that's goofy.
Like,
too.
Did you not do laundry and those were the only 2 pieces of clothes that you had and you just happened to throw those together? That's what you did. You need to go. You need to go back in the house. That's not a good look.
No,
it's just not. No, it's and the problem is that, like you said, I think it looks hideous.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at some of this stuff that the older generation of mine wore, and I'd be like, I'd never be caught dead in that either.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, but then again, I'm a little older than you are. I rolled my jeans when I was in high school. I would cuff them and roll them up with the high top tennis shoes.
The tight roll, the fold and roll?
Yeah, the tight roll and roll. Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was again not a good look on an oversized, overweight high school kid. Not a good look.
Not a good look on anyone, but they even started lining the jeans so that they would be rolled up and have a pattern at the bottom of jeans. That became such a popular trend.
Yeah.
It's
I
funny
still need help.
Yeah.
I still need help. I once said to my wife, I said, I'd like to go buy some new shoes, but I just kind of want to just buy some white tennis shoes, just some pure white tennis shoes. And she stopped dead in her tracks and she goes, no. And I was like, what? She's like, because old people wear those. No, they don't. So we're at mass the next morning, and she starts nudging me with her elbow. She's like, hey, see that dude over there? 70 years old. Look at his shoes. See that guy over there walking up for communion? See that guy? White shoes. So the funny thing about that is, though, so then like 3 weeks later, I'm at a show choir event for Caitlin. I'm sitting in the hallway, and I look over, and my ex-wife is standing over there with her boyfriend, who's about 10 years older than he is. And I look down, and they're both wearing the exact same white leather shoes, white leather tennis shoes, the exact same shoes. So, and I'm not friends with her on social media. We barely speak as it is. Sure. So I took my phone out, and I just snapped a picture of just her feet, right? Just the feet. And I posted it on Facebook, and I go, "Oh, look, this couple's so cute. They have matching tennis shoes." And I thought, I can troll her and make fun of her, and she'll never know, and whatever. And sure enough, my oldest kid, Taylor, comments on it. Is that Mom and Tim? His name was Tim. He's like, "Is that Mom and Tim?" Well, of course, at that point, then my ex-wife could see what Taylor had posted, and within 5 minutes, I get a text message. "You're such a selfish asshole, and how dare you make fun of somebody?" But then in the meantime, my other buddy commented and said, "That's just one step closer to matching tracksuits." So of course it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. I thought maybe I could troll her, but she found out, and so yeah, that's my white leather tennis shoes. I do not own a pair.
You know what's funny about the whole matching clothes thing? I was thinking about this today. So I live close to a lake that has a walking path around it. I go walk around it as often as I can. And I have noticed, so you've noticed certainly that older couples do eventually start wearing matching tracksuits or, matching outfits. I've actually noticed 20-somethings that are wearing matching outfits to go walk around the lake. And that's something, and that's something that has really confused me. That's something that, my sisters did when they were in 5th grade with their best friends or whatever, but they were, 12 years old at the time. They're not 25. And now I will see these 20-somethings that are wearing matching outfits as they go for walks around the lake. And I'm wondering if that's a trend that I'm not understanding as an old man of.
No, I'll tell you what that is.
They do.
That's a guy that is already asking for trouble and is losing his manhood. At some point, you just got to put your foot down and say, "I'm not wearing that." No. You start telling me that I got to wear the same clothes as you, then that's just not going to happen. I mean, I have some self-esteem. Oh, wait. Oh, no. I thought my wife was coming down. I thought maybe I might get in trouble.
Oh, perfect.
I'm awful tough down in the basement, I'll let you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of 20-year-olds and the annoying shit that they do.
Yes.
Can we talk about the uselessness of Instagram and Snapchat filters? Can we talk about that?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
If I see one more profile picture at work of people's Office 365 picture of their selfie of their Snapchat filter with the butterflies fighting over their heads or the little sparkles under their eyes, I don't need a Snapchat filtered picture of you. I don't want to walk into a business thing or to a company outing and go, "Hey, where's Jill at?" "Oh, I'm Jill." "No, you're not Jill, because Jill is clean complexion and no pimples." Just put your freaking picture up there and be done with it.
They look like the airbrushed pictures that used to be done at the county fair, where they would airbrush in stars and sparkles and then put it on a t-shirt. It looks that bad. I was a late adopter to Instagram. I was a late adopter to Snapchat. I actually only joined Snapchat because of Tailgate Society, because I already felt like one of the older people on there, and I felt like I was one of the more clueless guys on there in the first place, and they were all doing Snapchat. And I thought, okay, I should see what this is all about. And I still don't entirely get it, and I'm amazed I haven't sent just a picture of my shoes to the entire group because I don't know what I'm doing. But the filter thing is a whole other piece, right? It's one thing to learn how to use these technologies, another thing to put puppy ears on things, or all
Turn
of these
yourself
other
into a talking hot dog.
Exactly.
Don't get it.
I don't get it. I would absolutely agree with that one. I don't get it. And then to take it one step further and actually make that part of your brand identity outside of Snapchat or outside of Instagram, we all, I think young people who are listening should probably understand, whether you get it or not, they probably understand brand identity more than we do. we'll get into the whole other thing I want to talk about in a little bit is influencers on social media, because that's a phenomenon that still just blows my mind. But whether you like it or not, how you present yourself to the rest of the world in a professional environment or in a what other environment is going to carry through, and you can delineate between Snapchat Tim and at the office Tim, and the second office Tim starts using Snapchat Tim's photos as his Office 365 avatar, like you said, now you're bringing these worlds into a collision that is just bizarre to me.
Yeah, I'm not. there's a business persona and a personal persona, and I think that line has blurred a lot now anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I was always of the impression that when you go to work, you button your tie up a little bit, you take care of business, you're on your company's time, it's just a little bit more professional courtesy, right?
Sure.
You can be yourself and you can enjoy work and you can have a good time. And I do. But I also have an outside work persona that I would not bring into work, right? And I think social media blurs that everywhere.
Oh, for sure.
Which is a conversation that I had with Caitlin about when the Iowa State University had thrown out all the rules of outside of campus and what they could do and so on. And we may have talked about this once before, but
yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah,
I explained to her. I said, that's going to be no different when you get a job. When you get a job, if you think you can just post whatever you want on your social media and your job not have some sort of a pull or say in that kind of stuff, you're sorely mistaken, right? Yeah. I mean, my wife, who's a teacher, there's certain things that she won't post or talk about on social media, whatever, because you never know if there's a parent of a kid that is a friend of a friend that might see something, and next thing you know, there's misjudgment or whatever, or you may have put the school in a bad light or your employer or whatever else.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's even even if like you guys are out at a sports bar watching an Iowa State game, right? Just the way she might behave, not that your wife is going to get rowdy and rambunctious and drunk and whatever.
She is.
But like just the way that she might behave, she has to understand that even though she's not broadcasting it out to the world on social media, she's acting in an environment that she might not recognize a kid's student or a student's parents. It's harder for her to remember all of her students' parents than it is for all of her students' parents to recognize her.
To manage her, right? Yeah, when we dated early in our lives, she she called me. It was a Friday afternoon after she was going to come over for dinner, and she goes, "Hey, I'm stopping at the store, and I'm going to have some drinks or whatever, and I'll bring them over." And I was like, "Okay." So then when she got there, she was like, so I went in through the checkout lane, and sure enough, one of my students and her parents were right behind me, and I was doing nothing but checking out with a bunch of alcohol.
Yeah, right.
Like, and the kids were like, "Mom, that's my teacher. That's my teacher." And she was like, I was trying to like hide my face so she didn't see what, that, oh my God, my kid's teacher is an alcoholic.
Yeah, well, I think that's when I would.
She's like, I really wanted to turn around and just tell him, "Listen, I'm drinking because your kid doesn't want to pay attention."
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what I would have said. Is I just would have pointed to that and pointed to that kid and just not said a word.
Oh man,
that's funny. So you mentioned social media. You had a conversation with Caitlin about it. We've talked about just how we don't understand necessarily how comfortable people are blurring the lines, but I think there's just other aspects of media. We didn't grow up with the internet. It wasn't a thing, right? Whereas my 5-year-old doesn't even understand what it's like to not be able to get information or find things or buy things. You know, a part breaks in my house, I can do a Google search now and I can find that part and I can get it here, within 5 days. When we were growing up, it was like, okay, well, that thing is just broken now because there's no way I'm going to be able to figure out how to source that replacement. You know, I can call the company that no longer exists. I can try to go to the hardware store where at the time, the guy who worked at the hardware store actually knew everything about anything. But it's a different world. I think there are other things on the internet, other platforms. You know, we kind of touched on it before. Things like YouTube that I don't think I fully understand the way that YouTube is used. Not just, I use YouTube. I go to YouTube University to learn how to repair my washing machine or things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are other ways that YouTube is being used right now by younger generations that I don't even understand. And I'm sure particularly with like your 17-year-old boys that you're seeing that is just confusing the hell out of you, right?
I walked in one night and Josh is sitting in the middle of the room and he's watching a YouTube video of a guy opening boxes. And I was like, what are you watching? He's like, this guy ordered a bunch of stuff and it's a surprise of what's in the boxes and he's opening it and you don't know what's in the boxes. Josh, he knows what's in the box he ordered. Are you seriously watching a show of somebody just opening boxes of stuff? It was like a WWE reveal, like he got stuff from the WWE store, and I was like, he ordered it. He's got to know what's in that box. Yeah, but he doesn't know what's in what box. How long have you been watching this? And here's how influential it is. So they're pretty influential. They have a learning disability, which is Williams syndrome, among other things. It's a physical ailment and so on. But man, they're just the two best kids you just ever met. I mean, they loving and caring and so on. But Jordan one day for 3 days in a row. So one day he comes down and he says, "Hey, we got any ribs?" He's like, "No. Can you make some?" "Well, not right now. I can't. No, but if you want ribs, I'll make some ribs this weekend." "Yeah, I really want some ribs." Okay. So then he goes back upstairs, and then the next night he comes down and he says, "We have any water bottles and some like hard candy?" "No. I mean, we got water, but I don't know that we have any hard candy. Why?" "I'm just asking." Okay. So then the next night he comes down and he goes, Hey, Chris, we have a metal detector. What are you watching up there? Like, are you watching YouTube videos again? He's like, yeah. I was like, what are you watching now? This guy found treasure on the beach with a metal detector. Okay, well, first of all, we're not anywhere near a beach.
Yeah. And
second of all, I'm pretty sure the guy probably planted some stuff and then found it, and now he's got like 1 million subscribers. Like, right. You can't be watching that kind of stuff. Like, you can't. But I was like, it's like the third day in a row. I was like, what is he watching up there? So he must have watched some barbecue show the first day. I don't know. And then he was watching experiments every day.
I'm grateful that those weren't all connected, because I was racking my brain to try to figure out like what episode of MacGyver involved some ribs, a metal detector, and some bottles.
I was super excited about the ribs. I was like, well, yeah, we can make some ribs this weekend. Sure, I'm all over that.
Yeah. No, I would encourage watching that YouTube channel. That sounds perfect.
No kidding.
Yeah. Well, and that's
the watching of video games too. They'll sit there and watch other people play video games, and I'm like, you got the same fucking game right there. Why don't you just pop it in and experience it yourself?
Right. You know, I was thinking about that. The whole idea of Twitch as a platform where people watch other people play video games, and I was thinking, okay, well, you know, to be fair, I watch other people play sports, but I I'm not playing. I don't have the ability to play that exact same game in real time, like real sport in real time with that, right? If I'm watching NBA players, it's all of these people playing together in a league that I'll never be able to get to. But if it's watching people play a video game that I already have, wouldn't I rather just play the game? I don't know. It's very confusing to me for sure.
That's the one that really gets me, is that they just watch people. You're watching somebody else's computer screen. Like, I get tired of looking at my own computer screen after a day of work. It's the last thing I'd want to do is sit again and watch somebody else's computer screen. There's no way. And there were times I would walk through our office at work sometimes, and people would have 2 or 3 monitors, and there'd be one guy, and he'd literally on his third monitor, that's what he had up, was YouTube of people playing video games all day long. And I like, does that dude do any work? And again, he's like 23, 24. I'm like, do you do anything around here?
I for a while there, I was a research assistant in a cognitive neuroscience lab. And I remember some research that was being done on how, because of the internet, the way people have learned to, whether it be problem solve or just manage the information that they receive, that we have now become more indexes of information, right? So when you and I grew up, we had to be subject matter experts because we couldn't just quickly run to the library to we could go to the library and learn how to do things. But if you were in the middle of changing the oil in your car and you realized you had the wrong size wrench, or you couldn't access this type of thing, you couldn't, you'd have to stop and clean yourself up and go to a auto parts store, go to somewhere else to learn all these things. Whereas now you can just hop on your smartphone, take 2 seconds to go, hey, how do I take this flange off? That type of thing. And so we've become more indexes of information, less subject matter experts, and more, I know a little bit about a lot of things because I know I don't have to rely on memorizing all of the details. I can know high level how something works, and then I will go quickly Google search the details. And it's actually just changed the way we problem solve and the way we look these things up. But it's still just very different to me to realize how much of an impact, not just the important things like how do I do X, Y, Z, but just how I consume information in general. So, your boys are consuming information in a very different way, or that 24-year-old is processing what's going on. So he might be working while he has this going on because his brain is already just wired in a different way to react to the stimuli that are hitting his neurons, right? I don't know. It's all bizarre.
No, it makes sense, and that's how they learn now. That's their learning process, and how they adapt and swallow knowledge is completely different than when you or I grew up.
Yeah.
And I am just as there were times when I first met my wife. My wife is a teacher, and she's all about learning and teaching how to do things, and well, what if you didn't have a smartphone, and how would you do this? And I can remember there were times when we first met and we'd be driving somewhere and she'd pull out the old map and pull the map out, and unfold it, and we're going to figure this out and so on. And I'm thinking, is there a reason why we're not just pulling out our phones and Googling this so we can get going?
Yeah.
And we would have a couple of discussions. Like, I would sit there and think, we could have been 5 minutes down the road already, let's go. But to her point, that's a lost art.
Yeah.
When we went on our last trip and I gave a map to Caitlin and I said, tell me where we're going to go, she was like, not sure how to do this, right? That's a lost art. I still to this day will Google things and go, I had to replace a garbage disposal or something like that. I didn't know how to do it. Hell, I put a dishwasher in. I bought a dishwasher. This is how dumb I am. I bought a dishwasher like 6 months ago. and they wanted to charge me $150 to install the dishwasher. And I was like, nah, fuck that. I'll do it myself. I can Google that, right? 2.5 hours later, I had it halfway in and then couldn't figure out how to get the water hooked up and so on. And I walked into the living room and said to Stacy and said, I'm in over my head. I don't know what to do. And I thought to myself a little bit, God, this is one of the times where I'm sad that my dad's not around, because I could have called him and he would have come over, or I think to myself, I really wish I would have paid more attention when I was younger, when he would do things and do construction or whatever. I would be a little more knowledgeable, and I would get really mad at myself and go, I can't, I'm a smart guy. I can't believe I can't put a fucking dishwasher in, right? Yeah. So then I put something on Facebook and posted, and this buddy of mine says, what's the problem? And I told him, and he came over, and within 30 minutes, well, the first thing he did is he pulled the whole fucking thing out and undid everything that I did. And I was like, dude, I just lost 2.5 hours of my fucking life. None of that was right. And he's like, no, it's just easier to start over. 30 minutes. He had it all hooked up and we were running a dishwasher. And I was like, man, I'm so dumb. And I was like, how much do I owe you? And he's like, $45. I couldn't get out the checkbook fast enough. I was like, it's totally worth it. But that's a lost art of learning that stuff, right? I rely on, in my mind, I'm thinking I can just Google it and I'll figure it out, which is great sometimes. But you don't, to your point, you index things. You don't learn anything. You're indexing things.
Yeah. I had this conversation with someone, a guy I recently reconnected with. We grew up in the same hometown, but he lives out in Oregon. He's a brewer out there. And we were talking about like how proud we feel. Like, I fixed my washing machine the other day. It wasn't draining properly. It wasn't pumping properly. It had a couple of different things. And I took it apart and I kind of reverse engineered what was going on and fixed it. And I think part of that had to do with understanding kind of process flow because of brewing. And it helped me kind of solve that. But I felt really, really, really proud of myself. And then I thought, man, as proud as I am, my dad would have been like, so what'd you learn after second grade? Because that's something he probably knew how to do forever. He grew up on a farm and they could do everything. And something that I felt like, man, I feel like a grown-up in my 40s fixing my own washing machine. And my dad probably would have been like, and Matt was saying that exact same thing about he's older than me. He's closer to your age. And he was like, yeah, every time I feel like I've accomplished something and then like I talk to my dad, like he's not even being a jerk about it. He's just not as impressed with me as I am as impressed with me.
I know. I know.
Yeah. So I think that's a good place to maybe go ahead and take a break now that we've kind of maybe come to a realization that a lot of this is generational and how we are we're sitting looking at the generation or two or three behind us and being confused. And now I think we also are recognizing that the generations that preceded us are also went through the exact same thing. Right? It's cyclical. So why don't we go ahead and take a break? We'll get a word from our sponsor, Deadeye Barbecue Sauce, and then we will come back up and we will talk about kind of what else we're seeing, what else we're challenged with, and maybe what we can do with that as well. So once again, this is Old Man Strength, brought to you by the Tailgate Society and sponsored by Deadeye Barbecue Sauce, the best damn barbecue sauce in the known universe.
Back when I started Deadeye, I knew I wanted to innovate the barbecue game. Since day one, we've offered a premium barbecue product unlike anything else on the market. Great Aunt Irene had something special tucked away on a recipe card in her cupboard, and there was no way we weren't going to do something about it. So we decided to take it one step further, introducing Deadeye Superfood Barbecue Sauce. We've got 5 new flavors: Graviola, Acerola, Pink Guava, Acai, and Dragon Fruit. They're a first of its kind, and they're packed with flavor. Find it at your local grocer today or at deadeyebbq.com.
And once again, this is Old Man Strength. I am Tim Johnson, joined by Chris Shipley. Chris, before the break, we were kind of talking about how much maybe we have also been, I don't want to say a victim. We've also been on the other side of the coin that we're talking about here, right? That our dads very easily could have had their own, well, they wouldn't have had a podcast. I don't know. They would have had a sitting around the driveway in lawn chairs drinking beer.
I was going to say, my dad's podcast, we're sitting around the kitchen table, drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, and bitching about everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Telling everybody how dumb his kid was.
I love the idea of just like just the Folgers crystals and a cigarette, just grumpy. Yeah, absolutely.
I tell you, it was brutal. I can remember nights, middle of July, it's like 89 degrees outside, and he's sitting out on the front porch with a steaming cup of coffee and smoking cigarettes. And I'm like, you are insane. You are insane. And it'd be his 5th or 6th cup of coffee.
So what do you think your dad's response would have been if he would have heard, say, his grandchild say, I want to be an influencer?
Oh, well, see, that's not fair, because the grandkids, they could do no wrong, right?
Oh, that's true. True.
I mean, I remember really getting on my kid. She was just a holy terror at one point. Taylor was, and I lost my cool and screamed at her, and he goes, "Hey, you shouldn't scream at that little girl." What?
Like I'm
you
sorry,
fucking screamed at me. You
screamed
at me you screamed at me every day of my life. And he's like, right, and that was wrong. Are you fucking kidding me right now? Shut up, I said. So I mean, if Caitlin would have came and said, I want to be an Instagram influencer, he would have said, well, that sounds wonderful, honey. That's really great. And then he'd ask me what Instagram was and what an influencer was. Me, on the other hand, I'd have told her, well, you better have a backup plan. So, but they did no wrong in his eyes, of course.
No,
so,
that's true. That's absolutely fair.
But parents are, I'll be the same way. So, yeah. and that's fine. And I did my share of dumbass, weird little trends when I was younger. We were down in Alabama for vacation this year, and it reminded me that one summer I decided to lighten my hair by putting a bunch of lemon juice in it every day.
Oh, yeah.
To go all beach blonde,
Oh, yeah.
And how much my dad was just so out of his mind, pissed off about it, because I was bleaching my hair every day, and I had went and got this earring, and he was losing it. And I was like, it's cool. And he's like, it's not. You look like a fucking idiot. He said, you can't be, you're not going anywhere with me.
Yeah. I remember one time, I think it was after because I got both ears pierced, and I think my dad said something like, boy, I look at you and you look a lot like me, and I know you're my son. Then you turn around and you look a lot like my daughter. I was like, come on, Dad.
The boys' birthday is next month. I said this, and for I don't know, 6 months they've talked about wanting to get tattoos.
Yeah.
And Jordan's like, I'm going to get a full sleeve. Dude, you're going to go in there and they're going to pull that needle out, and within 5 seconds you're going to be like, I changed my mind. You're not getting a full sleeve right off the bat. Yes, I am. I'm getting a big tiger on my back. He said, I was like, do you have any idea? But, they, back to that point, they see stuff on YouTube, and they see stuff for their favorite YouTubers, and they see all this cool stuff or whatever. And I think part of them wants to do it because that's what they think is cool.
Yep.
And whereas I got a tattoo, I didn't get one until I was, 35, 34. And the tattoo that I got had a reason, right? Some people want to get them because they're art, and I get that. And that's not, I'm not disparaging that. But for them, I think part of they want to get it is because it's just cool and they want to be cool, And I think there's not them specifically, but I think that's part of what we're talking about here is when you talk about influencers and things like that, and what a huge business that is is also not necessarily such a great thing.
Right. So we talk about influencers, right? They're influence. We talk about influencers, but the flip side to that is if there's an influencer, there are millions of, I don't know if influencee is the word, but there are millions of followers, right? We talk about this language of social media, and I follow this person, I follow that person, but the reality is, kind of, as we kicked off the show, you're following, right? And so there's a lot of these people being influenced, whether it be by the one idiot that wore jeans that were 3 inches too short, or the guy who plants metal in the beach, or the guy who gets a tiger tattoo on his back. Is you have these influencers, and now you have a younger generation that is very easily influenced. I don't know. I don't know how you handle that as a father with older kids. Like I said, my kid is not as old, but I can already tell just the influence that, first of all, her friends have, or television or videos or whatever she might watch when she's at her mom's house that I'm not even familiar with. But there is a culture right now that there are seemingly specific people that get held up that aren't even, there's an 8-year-old that makes $1 million a year on YouTube unboxing toys, right? And so it's this very weird culture that it's very foreign to me, and I don't know maybe how you navigate that. And, both kind of through the eyes of your experience, but also, again, tying back to how your folks navigated the weird world that you grew up in. And I don't know if you've got any insight there you want to share.
Yeah, it's a little weird to me that it's like that. But if you look back, really, influencers are no different than TV commercials or magazine covers or any other thing that engages you to buy product, right? That's really what it is. And I think no different than on a much smaller scale, me growing up and wanting to buy a certain box of cereal because there was a cool toy on it because I saw it on a commercial for Saturday morning cartoons. Yeah. I mean, that's no different than that YouTuber, having a show about making paper origami and that kid then wanting to go out and buy all these supplies or whatever else. It's all kind of in the same realm of it. I think, and it's hard. I think part of it is growing up with what you have and having a good foundation. I can say with all honesty, I grew up in a family that was poor. My as we've talked before, my mom and dad both were high school dropouts. Mm-hmm. Provided a wonderful family and a wonderful home, and they worked hard for it, but we weren't rolling in any kind of money. There's no way we weren't rolling in any money. And I had a friend that he'd get straight A's and his parents would pay him for his A's. And I remember going to my dad and going, "How come you don't pay me for A's?" And he's like, "Because you should be getting them anyways for fucking free."
Right?
He's like, "Why would I pay you for something you should be doing anyways?" Right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a household where, I had friends that got money for doing their weekly chores. And my dad was like, when I was your age, I was going out delivering a calf, throwing it over my shoulders, and walking it in from the pasture to the barn. Why do you want to get paid for taking out the garbage and dusting the furniture?
Right. Yeah. I wasn't getting an allowance for the shit that I should be doing in my own house anyways. And I have the same, to roll it back, I had the same conversation with my oldest daughter. Taylor was living here for a while. She struggles a lot with keeping a job and keeping a home. And, on a separate note, hopefully we may have found a solution for her to move into with some counseling and so on to get help.
Yep.
But, at one point when she was living here, at 22 years old, her only rules were to go to work every day, to get up and make sure that she's, personally hygienically taking care of things. She picks up after herself and she makes her room every day. And there were times she couldn't even do that. And I'd be like, you can't even do just the normal functioning things that any other adult should do without me having to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not how the world works, right? I shouldn't, or she would go, well, I did this for a week. Can you spot me some money for cigarettes or whatever? I've been really good. Why should I reward you for doing something you should be doing anyways? That's not how the world works. That doesn't work that way. So it's kind of the same thing with you said. It's back and forth with generations or whatever. It's just a different aspect of it and a different avenue of it. Really, I mean, I personally think it all started with little kids' birthday parties. If you want to know the truth, with Taylor, I'll never forget. Taylor was like 2 or 3 years old, and we had her first birthday party where she got to invite friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And her mother and my mom were like, well, we got to buy all these little gift bags and fill them up with candy and everything else to give to the kids. What? Why the fuck are we doing that? It's my kid's birthday. They should be bringing shit to her. And they're like, no. You have to buy gift bags. I got to spend money on gifts for kids to come to my own kid's fucking birthday party? What? Yeah, no, where does this come from?
I'm very confused. I remember going to birthday parties as a kid, going to the roller skating rink birthday party, or the swimming pool party. I don't ever remember getting a gift bag, and I don't ever remember going to a birthday party expecting to come home with anything. And now that you have to make sure that every kid doesn't feel left out. And I'm like, well, no, that's the whole point of making it a special day.
We have to buy him something. No, we don't.
Yeah, I know.
I guarantee you those kids are going to come to this birthday party, and if they go, what? There's no fucking gift bag, no swag bag? I'm fucking out of here. Screw that. They're not going to say that. No. They're getting cake. They're getting ice cream. I spent $300 on this fucking thing.
Yeah. Cake, ice cream, and playing with your friends. What other Saturday do you get cake, ice cream, and be able to play?
I should rent out an entire hotel room, and that's the other one.
Oh, yeah.
Every year, Caitlin would be like, can we get a hotel room for my birthday? No! I'm not renting a hotel room for your birthday. We can have it in the house. Give me a break, people. I'm not doing that. So that's where the entire thing went down the tubes, is when we started giving gift bags at kids' birthday parties.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that we need to have someone. Maybe we can get Johnson & Johnson to sponsor this. We need to have a YouTube channel where there is a YouTube influencer of someone just doing mundane, everyday tasks like cleaning their room and brushing their teeth. Maybe that's the influence that we can have.
Right?
There's 100 million subscribers on someone saying, here's how you take the garbage from your room to the garbage can outside. Here's how you make your bed.
Well, I can tell you right now, none of my kids are going to qualify for that. So.
But if we find the right person to do it,
right,
who has a fancy haircut, who buttons the top button on their button-down shirt and wears pants that are too short, and they're showing them how to make their bed, maybe we can get them to do this.
With some sort of a YouTube Snapchat filter that filters it the entire time. It's $1 million idea. How are we not rich right now? It's ridiculous.
I know. I'm gonna try to pitch this. I'm gonna try to find some other old brand that like aligns with the whole grumpy old man. Like,
Oh, yeah.
just do the basics to live. Just come
Right?
on. And have them sponsor just somebody being like, here's how you pick up something after you took it out. Here's how you take your dishes from the dining room table over to the dishwasher. Like, just the basics.
Okay, so you want to talk basics. This is probably really going to be a hot button issue for me.
Okay. All right. Let's hear it.
All right. So these services where you can order the food in these boxes that have already got all the ingredients separated out and all that other...
Yeah, for sure.
That shit's got to go. You're telling me you can't pull out a recipe and go to the fucking store and buy it and cut it up yourself? That's the whole point of learning how to cook.
Right.
All you're doing is just assembling something. At that point, you might as well put a model car together. Like that's so they cut the prosciutto for you, and then you're gonna post it on your Instagram or Snapchat with some filter and go, look, I made sea bass with chili and green beans, and get the fuck out of here. You didn't do that. You ordered it out of a box, and I'm not eating food out of a box like that either. That's not happening. So I'm just saying, I had a whole conversation at work with people at work today, and I got hammered for it. And all I'm saying is, learn to go to the store and buy your own groceries.
I like the take. I especially like the analogy of building a model car or like a model airplane. It's like in any number of these things where people built a craft. You know, you didn't design that. You didn't hand cut those pieces. You pushed them out of a plastic, extruded piece and glued them together, right? That's definitely what those boxes are. And I would absolutely agree with that. Like, learn how to go grocery shopping, learn how to pick out these ingredients, learn the difference between fresh tomatoes and the tomato that just came into your box. Learn some of those things. I will say the one benefit, and where I'll probably go ahead and disagree with you here, is that it probably does expose people to more exotic ingredients than they would otherwise expose themselves to. So one of the challenges that I have had when we talk, about things, when you propose the whole idea of things that the younger generation does or doesn't do that drives us insane, I'll be honest, one of the first things that I started to think of are the things that come up on the TGS Slack channels that blow my mind. The first one, which, by the way, maybe I'm confused, came up a few months ago, the number of people, like grown adults on Tailgate Society, that don't know how to ride a bike. That one blew my mind.
What?
Yes. So I think this was before you joined.
This is
Chris.
before me.
There were a number of people who told me they didn't know how to ride a bike, and I thought it was insane, and they thought I was insane for thinking it was insane. But then I'm rewatching Schitt's Creek, and there's an episode where Mutt buys Alexis a bike and she doesn't know how to ride it, and David doesn't know how to ride it. And the whole point of that is, they're privileged kids who never had to do that, and that's why they don't know how to ride a bike. But the whole point is to point out how absurd it is that they are adults that made it to their 20s and 30s that don't know how to ride a bike. And we all laugh at this, and then I go on TGS, and they're like, no, I don't know how to ride a bike. So that
would blow me away.
Yes, that one blew my mind. It still blows my mind. My daughter is 5 and has been riding without training wheels forever. My friend's kid actually learned how to ride without training wheels at 2. She was 2 years old and she learned how to ride without training wheels. That's advanced, but still, like, it blows my mind that adults don't know how to ride a bike. But then the other thing that has come up is in the food channel on the CGS Slack, the number of adults that haven't had things like pistachios. Like, you're an adult and you've never had a pistachio in your life. And that also to two TGS listeners that are actually listening to this. I'm not making fun of you per se. I'm not calling you out by name.
We're just saying you need to expand your horizons a little bit.
Right. And so that's something where these food boxes, I do think the benefit that comes from them is that there's probably a recipe that came across that had pistachios in there, and they probably would not have made that recipe had it not been for the fact that everything was already basically put on a platter and they just had to cook and assemble it.
Yeah,
so I think there's
that's fair.
there.
That's fair. There's been times where I've pulled out a recipe or whatever and thought, I don't even know how to cut a leek, right? Like it calls for leeks. How do I cut that? You know,
I had leeks tonight, by the way. I was making fun of leeks.
Look at that.
I did. For dinner tonight, I smoked the brisket, and then we roasted French beans and leeks.
There you go.
Right. So yeah, it is out there, right? And if that would have come into a box that you would have gotten, maybe you would have known a little bit more about leeks.
Maybe. I do all the cooking here at my house, most of the cooking. I enjoy to cook, whatever. But there'll be times where my wife is like, "Oh, this smells really good," or "This is really good." Where'd you get the recipe? I don't know. I just tried something. I just put it. You know, that's the beauty of. To me, that is my art, right? That's to play around and to see if I can make this taste this certain way, or let's see what this is. And there's been plenty of times where I tried to make sugar-free donuts one time when I was losing a bunch of weight, and they were so bad the dog wouldn't even eat them. So I mean, they were, there's some epic fails in there.
Things, 100% of things that are sugar-free that people say taste good are consumed by liars.
Well, they were not edible. They were like little boulders is what they were. They were terrible. Awesome. But I can see that. I mean, there is benefits to that stuff, and there is benefits to YouTube and so on. I would have never been able to figure out how to change the battery out of my daughter's car without YouTube. Couldn't find it. Looked all over for it under the wheel well of the front driver's car. I mean, who puts that? Yeah. Oh yeah, Chrysler Sebring. She had a bad battery. I opened the hood up. There's no battery. Oh, it's got to be in the trunk. Looked in the trunk. Oh, there's no battery. Looked in the back seat. What the fuck? Where's this fucking battery at? YouTube it.
That's a whole other thing that we could probably talk about is, oh my God, for 30 years, changing your oil or replacing a battery was easy.
Yes.
You had to be taught once, and you could do it on every car. Yes. Make, model, year, whatever. It wasn't a problem. And now all of a sudden, I went from changing my oil regularly to doing a lot of my maintenance, changing my spark plugs and all of that, to now going, shit, it's actually going to just be faster and easier to take it to the dealer or to take it to a shop, because now it requires like some weird wrench or some angle to get at that I don't have, or you have to move something. When the hell did that happen? It was like within the last 15, 20 years, suddenly cars, not even 20, the last 10 years, I would say, that suddenly, I don't know. Everyone knows how to jump a car, and you lift up a hood and you see a battery, so you can do that.
Who the fuck puts a battery under the wheel well of a car that you got to jack it up and take the front tire off to get to the battery?
How
found the YouTube.
How do you jump that car?
They have, I guess there's 2 connector pins underneath the hood that are like rods that run to that battery. But I pulled up the first YouTube video and I was like, well, this ain't right. This dude's jacking his fucking car up. That can't be right. I exited out of it, went to another one. Sure enough.
No, God, everything should look like my 87 Chevy Celebrity, and that's the last thing I want to acknowledge. Right. No, I know how to access this. I know how to access that. I know how to, put my car up, access the oil filter, access the oil pan. You can't do it now, and it's very frustrating. That's a whole other rant. We'll go off some other day of how this newfangled technology is confounding us.
No kidding. No kidding.
Yeah, but it's just an interesting world to navigate, both for you and I suppose for your kids, that they're just adapted to it. I don't know how does your wife handle all of this? Can I ask?
Oh, she's a freaking saint. I mean, she I would say has done well first to raise two little boys there for a while, as a single mom with disabilities and the challenges that she had is pretty awe-inspiring anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But her perspective on things are so down to earth and so genuine that she's more of a calming effect to this entire family.
Right.
So how she handles things is she's pretty even keeled. You never see her too high. You never see her too low. She always looks at the bright side of things. She had more tools than I did when I moved in. So that tells you, she was willing to work hard and figure out how to fix it and just is a perfectionist, and that's okay because I need somebody like that in my life because I cut way too many corners in my life beforehand. But those years are BS. That's what we call those, before Stacy. That's what she likes to refer to those as, before Stacy. So, and, I sometimes, as a grumpy old man, like I don't need nobody help, and I don't need, she'd be like, you could call my dad, he'd help you. I don't have to ask for help. I'll do it myself, and we bought a big basketball hoop for the kids.
Yep.
And I don't know, I put it together and it took me all fucking day and I didn't know what I was doing, and I finally got it all done. And I called her out and I said, I got the hoop up, and she comes, it's got the base on the bottom or whatever, and she comes outside and she's outside 3 seconds and she goes, the hoop's on backwards.
Oh, God.
What? Sure enough, the base was, the base is on the back, and then the hoop goes to the other side of the base, and I had the base directly underneath the hoop, and I was like, fuck. God, there's a whole day, and I'm going off, it's a whole day of my wasted. And she goes, honey, there's a picture on the front of the box. Okay, well, you know what? You can go back in the fucking house now. Like, I don't need you. So, but she puts things in perspective, right? And she's an even keel, and she sees how to do things in an older way, but she can appreciate some of the newer ways as well. And and she's struggling with some of that stuff too. I mean, she's working, going into school every day, doing virtual learning, teaching these kids how to do this stuff through her computer and challenging. She said the other night, she goes, it took me, I don't know, 35 minutes to put together this PowerPoint presentation to help the kids learn how to pronounce these little words and so on, with this little dog that would float across the screen and so on. 35 minutes, and I got it all done, and it only took the kid 5 minutes to do online. And I was like, well, took him 5 minutes to do the lesson. It took me 35 minutes to build the freaking thing.
Yeah, I think about that a lot with my daughter, because it's a whole lot easier when you're working one-on-one with the kid to get through a lesson plan. And as I walk my daughter through distance learning, along with what her teacher and the school district is providing, is sometimes some of those things, it only takes 5 minutes for her to do. And I feel bad because I can tell that the teacher is especially because they didn't, in my daughter's school district, they had planned on being in person, and they pivoted literally like a week before school started to being distance. And so these teachers had to scramble. And my daughter, as a 5-year-old, is kindergarten. That's especially weird because those kids aren't really, they're not used to school. They don't understand what is going on. And so these teachers are having to take all of these things and turn on a dime to get a new lesson, and I can tell that my daughter's teacher is putting a lot of time and effort into all these things, and each kid is probably spending 5 minutes on each of those things, and it has to be just an exhaustive effort. But at the same time, I think that is the art of it all, right? Is to take something that has a lot of complexity to it and make it and get it to a point where you can take that complexity out of it for the child and allow them to just be able to digest it in the right way, even though it takes a lot of effort. And I think it points to that there's a lot going on in that learning lesson, that sometimes teaching something is twice as hard as learning it is, which is sort of backwards. But I think it's an important thing to acknowledge, is sometimes being able to take the knowledge that you have and give it to someone else, especially when it feels so easy. And if they get it, it is easy. But if they don't get it, that's an entire effort. And just being able to take that and make it digestible and quickly accessed by the child is a challenge. So hats off to her for sure.
Yeah, along with the challenge of, when you're in a classroom, I think you have different kids that learn different ways and whatever, and you can take and you can set one set of kids over here that are learning a certain way or whatever, and they're going to be okay, and you can go over here, and then you've got these ones that you can maybe give a little special extra attention, or you can answer an extra question here or so on. Whereas individually online, your individual one-on-one, sometimes that you lose them, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard stories of, that the kid all of a sudden just gets up and he walks away from the computer and there's no parent at home, and how do you get that kid back to re-engage and things and the teachers are frustrated and don't know how to fix it, and it's and we've talked before. I don't know what the right answer is. I guess I'm lucky that we're in an environment where these kids have been brought up in so much technology and so on, that if I had to have the boys do virtual learning or whatever and come down here, I wouldn't have to piecemeal them. Okay, we got to log in here, and now you got to click here, and you got to click in there. They're going to be savvy enough to be able to handle that, and even at a younger age, I think they are, because they're so ingrained in growing up with that technology or whatever, that it's just second nature to them. I mean, it's not like asking.
Yeah, they haven't known anything else, right? So, you ask I asked my mom to do something on the internet versus I asked my daughter to do something on the internet. My mom is using a frame of reference for everything else she's previously done in her life.
Right. Well,
whereas my daughter's only ever known one way of doing things.
You can flip it around. I remember one time the microwave was broke, and the kids wanted popcorn. And I was like, well, we're going to make it on the stove. And my oldest was like, what? She looked at me like I was some kind of nut job. And I was like, yeah, we make it on the stove. Dad, that doesn't work. Yeah, it does. Yeah. How did you think? Typical dad question. How do you think we did it when I was your age?
Yeah.
How did we do it if we didn't have a microwave, when there wasn't any microwave? She's like, I don't know. I didn't know there was never not a microwave.
I remember when my parents first brought home a microwave and being blown away by and then still we only used it for 2 things for forever. We didn't realize the full potential of that tool. But yeah, right. It's still amazing that they are growing up not thinking that wasn't even an option.
Yeah. Right. Well, we talk about wanting kids being followers and talking about always wanting the latest and greatest things or whatever. I've had conversation after conversation about cell phones and not having to get a new cell phone. Mm-hmm. This is the first time in I don't know how long since we've been paying for phones for all the kids, which again, there's no way my dad would have been. There's no way on earth, if cell phones were at a time when my dad was around, that my dad would have paid for my cell phone.
Oh yeah, right.
You got a job. You're paying your own car insurance. You're paying your own gas. You can pay your own cell phone bill. I'm not paying that.
Yeah.
But somehow I'm shelling out $350 a month for everybody's cell phones. Like, it's crazy. But we finally, just like 3 months ago, paid off all the phones, and our bill is like $120 less a month or something.
Yeah.
And within like 2 months, Caitlin is like, "Can I get it? When are we getting a new phone? When are we getting a new phone?" Jordan's like, aren't our contracts up? Can we get new phones? No, we don't have to get new phones just because the contract's up. Yours are working just fine.
Right?
It's just fine. Just because we finally paid it off doesn't mean we have to then turn around and get brand new ones again. That's not how, we don't have to do that.
Well, and I think, there's something to be said for the speed with which technology evolves and how much it is exponentially increased over the last 15 years. My folks held on to our old piece of furniture, tube TV, forever. And my mom's excuse was, well, from what I hear, there's new TVs that come out every year. And if we buy a new one, we're going to just have to buy a new one again after that. So we're just going to hang on to this one until it dies. And, God bless them, they did. They hung on to that tube TV until, the very last type thing. And I'm like, no, you can move on to something better, but not the best thing, and be comfortable with what I have is really good. You don't have to hang on to the oldest and the worst, but you also don't always have to have the latest and the greatest, because often the latest and the greatest is only, incrementally slightly better. There has to be a middle ground between holding on to archaic and functional technology and always having to constantly upgrade. And I don't know that, again, because of how rapidly things evolve right now, I don't know that we've always figured out what the difference is. I don't have to have an Apple IIe still, but I don't have to have the latest MacBook. I can find a middle ground there, and I don't have the answer. But it is something that is a challenge for sure.
And that doesn't change. I can remember 20 years ago when I was working in the store, and we had a lady come in. She wanted to buy a computer, and she was looking at a few things. And at one point, she's like, "Well, I don't want to buy something that's going to be obsolete in a year or two. I want something that's going to last me as long as my refrigerator." Okay, lady. Well, then you're not going to buy a computer.
Yeah.
Like you might as well just walk back out and because that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like the technology and the upgrades are going to change so rapidly or whatever that I can't tell you that in 6 months you're not probably going to have the third fastest processor at that point. I mean, it's just not possible. That they're always going to increase and they're always going to be better. So, sorry, that's not how the world works. And she didn't buy one, so which I'm probably glad, because she would have drove me nuts.
So I guess one of the things that strikes me, and you'll have to forgive me if this sounds cheesy, because it is cheesy, but at the same time, I'm not trying to be too hokey, is that as much as your kids are influenced by the influencers of the world, of social media, of Instagram, of YouTube, as much as they want to have the rainbow filter and the dragon tattoo and all of that nonsense, you and your wife are also influencers in how they are approaching all of that technology. Now, whether or not they actively embrace you as an influencer, right? So they might not like that you don't want to buy them the latest and greatest cell phone. But I can tell, one of the things that I've always appreciated about you, Chris, one of the things that I think in the couple episodes that we've done here that I can tell is that as much as you're an independent thinker and you have, a clear vision for how things ought to be, you are shaped by, last episode we talked a lot about what influence your dad had on you. you spent a good time tonight talking about how important your wife is on being a calming and an influence on you. I think you have a lot of the knowledge that other people have given to you, and you've absorbed that because you're not just a confident, smart individual, but you're also someone open to listening and pulling in from the wisdom of other people, right? So I think you have an ability to influence your kids in a different type of influencer way, but I think that's something that I think I'm getting out of our conversation tonight is understanding that some of the things are going to be silly, and maybe you're never going to not teach your boys to wear pants that are too short, or teach your kids to not.
Oh, that shit's not happening. They're not wearing pants.
But I mean, like some of these things that we think are silly, we just have to recognize that, you mentioned wearing a sweatshirt with cargo shorts, and just the pure mention of cargo shorts has already made a lot of people 35 and under cringe.
Oh, yeah,
right?
no.
They're just uncomfortable, right? And so some of that is, generational, you think that's cool, you're a dork, right? The white tennis shoes, whatever. But there is also... the wisdom that you can pass on and the influence that you have. I don't know. Is this hokey or
no, I don't think it's hokey. I think it's part of what you and I talked about when we decided to have a podcast. Was we wanted to try to pass on some of the stuff that we feel like are important, right? And in doing that, and part of that journey is being so open about our lives and being so open about struggles or whatever. And I will tell you, I remember as a kid, we talked last episode about me wanting to, secret of my success and being this executive or whatever. But I remember at a young age, remembering and thinking that, man, one of the greatest things that I would ever want to be is just a really good husband and a father. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, that would be super cool. And I had a really good father. And I remember my dad telling me when he was at his dad's funeral, he remembers sitting there thinking, I was too hard on him, and I should have made it easier for him, and I should have made it easier for him. And I thought that was a weird comment at the time, but now I see what he said, because I kind of felt the same way. Like, I wish that I would have done better of listening to him and so on. But now, Caitlin listened to the last episode, and she called me and she's like, what's the greatest thing about this is you're kind of documenting Grandpa's story, and I'll always have that now. I'll always have your voice. I'll always be able to hear stories about Grandpa or Grandma or our family or whatever. And that's kind of cool. And when you say that we influence them, I can tell you that even though it's frustrated, and I'm sure at some point in these episodes we'll get into my oldest and some of her struggles and some of her great qualities. But there are things with her that I will sometimes just want to just strangle because she just doesn't get some things. And then there's times where, what's that saying? Integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's watching, right?
Yep.
There'll be times where I've found out certain things that she's done or whatever, and I'll think, oh, maybe she's listening, right? Maybe she gets it. I think she gets it. Caitlin's the same way. Caitlin is probably, so aligned to her stepmother, to Stacy. It's not even crazy. Like, Stacy is a godsend when it comes to those girls, because listen, when I had them just by myself, I was putting body gel in their hair because I thought it was hair gel. I came into school one time with body gel, and Stacy came over to the house one day and she's like, "What the hell is in the girls' hair?" I was like, "I put gel in their hair because I couldn't get it combed because it was so bad." And I had these pictures of their first day, and she goes in the bathroom and she goes, "Chris, that's body gel." And I was like, I thought that was like to give their hair body or something. And she's like, oh my God. So you can imagine where those two kids would be if it wasn't for her. But
and so that was one other thing I wanted to say too, not to interrupt you, but like there's a part of you where, you look at, your oldest and think about the struggles, but there's also a part of you, because I know me as a dad, that it also makes me question, what am I doing? Right. So if my daughter it's a challenge.
I've questioned it 100 times. I'm thoroughly convinced that there's been times I've been thoroughly convinced that I completely and utterly ruined her by not being a good enough father for her. Mm-hmm. Now I know that's not true, but
it's not going to stop you from thinking it.
Right. Because I always feel like I could do better.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I always feel like I could have done better. I could have done this.
Sure.
I could have done this. I should have done this.
Sure.
I should have saw this.
As much as you're not a perfectionist, when it comes to being a dad, you know that you're never good enough.
Well, and the fact of the matter is it doesn't matter how old she gets. I'm never going to have experience of having a kid at that age.
Yeah.
I'm just not.
Yeah, you're always learning. That's the worst thing about a first kid, is that she's a victim of your inexperience.
Yes, absolutely. Right? But that being said, I've also come to the conclusion that she's at a point now where she's making her own choices, and I got to let her take her lumps. But as far as influencing her, I think deep down, I think that she knows what's right and what's wrong. And Caitlin has done a wonderful job of emulating her mother. She's her mother to a T. She's going to be a teacher. She's very frugal with her money. Mm-hmm. The kid won't go buy something unless she's got a coupon. That's straight Stacy through and through.
I'm glad you bring up Caitlin and the fact that she's listened to this, because this is definitely. I think we're aware that our audience is probably skewing older. You've shared some feedback we've gotten already from an older, so it's good to hear a younger perspective too, and to know that she's at least listened and not just said, "Okay, Dad, let me tell you everything you guys are doing wrong."
Right? No, you're right. I'm sure that once the newness will wear off,
like,
and the boys are. The boys are just a sponge, right? They'll pick up on anything that I say or that their dad says, and they have and I will say they have a wonderful dad who loves them and cares about them. And very rarely would somebody say this. Very lucky that he has let me be such an important part of their life. So
yeah, that's really cool.
Just to say that, but
yeah.
I feel like those boys are my responsibility to make sure that they're men, mm-hmm. and that they're able to take care of themselves and make good decisions and treat their future wife or girlfriends with respect. And those are big deals to me. And that's probably why if you see me on Twitter and I go off on, people that I think are not honorable and not honest, and people are like, well, you're naive, it's politics, or it's this or that or whatever. That doesn't change it for me. Nothing says that you can't be honorable and be a person of your word. And
yep, absolutely.
That's how you influence your kids, is by how you live and how you act.
Absolutely. No, Chris, I think that's one of the reasons I think that I've gravitated towards working with you on something like this is just because I think ultimately, first of all, I think you stand for something, and that's something that has been important for me is to understand what you stand for, and then the way that you can influence your kids. The word influence just keeps coming back up, but I think that's kind of the key here, right? Is that influence can be good. It can be bad. It can be silly. It can be tight rolling your jeans, and putting lemon juice in your hair, getting an earring. But it can also be on helping people understand good life skills and how to work through the constantly changing world that we're living in right now. So, man, this has been, again, I feel like I'm going to say this every single week, but man, this has been a really good conversation through all of this. Do you have anything else, Connie? We should probably get to a point where we put a bow on this, but do you have kind of anything else you wanted to throw in there, or maybe even just anything else in your list we didn't touch on tonight?
Okay. So as I was talking with some of my buddies, who literally just texted me and said, "Hey, I'm listening to the podcast. I honestly got to be honest, wasn't sure I was going to be into it, but I think it's great." So, but we were having a conversation about this stuff, and I said, you know what really is weird, and I think is a big deal, and it's current, and people think is cool, and I think it looks stupid, is Minecraft. That shit looks like it's from the mid 1980s. I don't know how any kids can play that with the graphics of that. It's so bad.
But it teaches them programming.
That's what somebody else told me. And
it's one of the best programming teaching tools out there right now.
That's
what's so amazing.
There's the old man in me, right? Because as soon as I saw it, I said, A, I'll never play it. B, it looks stupid. I don't want any part of it. And C, I'd probably die in the first 5 minutes anyways.
Yeah.
But then my buddy was like, way to stay current, Chris. That game came out in 2009. And I was like, shut up, Dick.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, it's a different way to teach programming. Like I remember doing QBasic programming in high school, right? Like not that long after punch cards, doing like basic programming, and I mean, it was fun because it was new, but it was still boring as hell. Whereas Minecraft is teaching them programming. I think it's incredible. Yeah, it is. It's a very weird meld of 1980s graphics and a way to, every high schooler and their sister is making an app these days. Like the way we program and the way we think about those things is just different. So it's fun. I'm glad that your friends have given you shit about that. I think that's
there'll be no shortage of it. At some point we're going to be able to tell the story, but my buddy Mike at work, it's his favorite Melvin story, absolutely favorite Melvin story, and it has nothing to do with this topic. And and if you heard it, you'd think, God, the guy's the biggest jackass ever. But it might be the greatest Melvin story ever. So we'll have to work it in at some point. It's a pretty good one.
Excellent. Well, good. Maybe at some point we'll grab some of your friends and they can come do a little guest spot on here and be grumpy with us. Chris, this is, as always, this is a fun time. Again, any kind of last thoughts? Anything to put a bow on this other than just recognizing that you are an influencer, for better or for worse?
Just check yourself in the mirror first before you wear some of that stuff.
Yeah,
that's my last dad advice, right? Wear some clean underwear in case you get in an accident, and don't wear high-watered pants.
Oh boy, and they're thinking the same thing about you in your cargo shorts. Okay. Excellent. Well, again, for Chris Shipley, I am Tim Johnson. This has been Old Man Strength, a podcast of the Tailgate Society, brought to you by Deadeye Barbecue Sauce. We're very excited that you joined us this week. We promise to keep on being as grumpy and as old man, as curmudgeonly as possible. And hopefully you guys are enjoying this as much as we are. Hopefully maybe some of you people are getting some insight. If nothing else, maybe our peers are at least enjoying the rant that we're on, and all of our young follower, hi Caitlin, all of our one young follower are also enjoying what we have to say. But until next time, we will see you on Old Man Strength.
I don't want to get on the bandwagon. I'll burn that wagon down and join the band. Traveling troubadours terrorizing street corners just to try to get some supper in our hands. Now I waited all my life to get this on my chest, scream bloody murder until someone understands that it ain't about the money, the drugs, or the women. I make this noise just because I can, and we'll all join in to that original sin.